Welcome to Fearless Finances, where I'll try to take the fear out of your finances. Today is episode 2 in my new series entitled My Money Making Move to Mexico. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about how to choose your location. Where in Mexico that you might want to live. Now, you already might have a place in mind. Maybe you've spent a lot of time in Puerto Vallarta and you love it there. Or you have family who you visited in Mexico City and you love it there. Maybe you already have a place in mind. But for the vast majority of us, we may have traveled to Mexico, but the vacation hotspots that we've been to may or may not be where we'd like to go. So today, I want to talk to you about how to learn more about each of the wonderful cities that are in Mexico without having to get on a plane to get there. So let's get to it. All right. So, how to decide where you should move in Mexico? The number one place to look is right where you're at, right here on YouTube. You got it. There are so many videos out there about where to move in Mexico. It's amazing. In fact, let me show you a quick search. I just started simply texting in best cities in Mex and look at all the different options that came up. We see for American expats, I would imagine you could put in Canadian or Australian or wherever you're from. See what they say about that. I also think the digital nomad one is interesting. When I first moved to Mexico, I thought I was going to be moving into a condo like any other condo I've moved into. You get to know your neighbors a little bit over time. That's not how it is in a lot of areas of Mexico. Now, you just saw for digital nomads. That means people are chances are working, like me. But the building that I moved into, most of the English speakers, because there were Mexican people living in the building, but most of the Americans and Canadians in my building are retired. And they had a lot more time than I did. And I will tell you, this is one of the benefits about moving to Mexico or an area like this, especially if you are a retiree, or I guess even not. It's really easy to meet people. Most people who are also living there that are English speakers from America or Canada are also looking for other people to get to know, to do things with. It's been super easy to find people. But here's the other thought you want to keep in mind with that. Well, at least how it applied for me. I'm trying to get some work done, and I went down there to try to write a book. And I love all these people. I do. But it was a big distraction. It also made me jealous. Well, that they got to do all these things. I'm going to the pool. Or they'd say, hey, Renee, we're going to bingo. Do you want to go? And I'd go, sure, when is it? Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thank you, but I'm working. Like nothing was in the evenings. Like nothing. Now, I have to figure if I had chosen to move to an area like Mexico City, as an example, and I've traveled there, and I'm going to do some videos about my upcoming travel to Mexico City. There's a lot of digital nomads in Mexico City. I'm certain I would have been able to find other working adults if I'd chosen Mexico City instead of the city that I chose. However, I wanted to be next to the ocean, and I am. And I've also found myself moving to another section of my building that does have a little bit more privacy. So it's working out well. But back to our search. What I think we ought to do is type in Mexico to live. We'll try that one. because some of these might relate to people going there for vacation. You might not be a retiree, but that's on the list. Best places to retire. Your search might be a little different. Maybe you want to go with the lowest cost cities in Mexico to live, whatever it might be. But we're just going to type in best cities in Mexico to live. And we'll see what it says. Well, it looks like we've got lots of options here. 7 places, 10 best cities, 5 best places. Lots of information for you to review. Now, before I moved down to Mexico, I was doing a lot of YouTube searches. They were just kind of coming up. I was also getting a lot for Southeast Asia, which may not be an area that I'll live, but I do plan to travel. And I'll do some videos on that too. So inexpensive. But anyway, in my research before I was moving, what kept coming up were these videos for La Paz. Now, if you're not familiar with La Paz, it is on the Baja of Mexico. It's close to the end. It's not quite to Cabo, but it has this lovely little port community. You might notice that Mazatlan is like right here. What I came to find out is you can take a little ferry over to La Paz. Essentially, a ferry goes back and forth between the two cities more than a few times a week. By the way, you definitely want to get on the passenger ship. The one that I was on a cargo ship, and it was one of the most grueling experiences of my life. It was the worst travel experience I've ever been on. People tell me there's one that's for passengers exclusively because this one had literally semis crossing with us, some of them refrigerated semis, which meant they were running all night. Most people do not get a bed. In fact, you're sleeping like in this chair. It was bad. I don't recommend it. But anyway, back to La Paz. I was watching lots of videos about La Paz, and the people who were doing the videos seemed to just love it. And they were interviewing other people that lived in La Paz. And I was like, wow, maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe instead of moving to Mazatlan, I should look at going to La Paz. I went for my birthday last year on the horrible ferry. It's not a great birthday travel. And I'll also tell you, going to La Paz or really anywhere, unless it's a mountainous area of Mexico in the summer, is not a good idea. La Paz is basically a desert area. And since it isn't technically on the ocean, instead it's on the Gulf of California, it doesn't get quite the same breeze level or cooler water temps. There's really cool things. There's a nature preserve, and that's part of the reason that I went there. But in July as well, you can't swim with the sea lions that you go there to see. We did stop and do some snorkeling somewhere else, and that was lovely. But that was the only lovely thing about my trip. Well, I did go to a really good restaurant, and there's really good restaurants in Mexico. I'll talk a little bit about that. But overall, I was hot. I was dying. Many places were not air conditioned. I did not find it offered all of the wonderful things that I have found in Mazatlan. So, this is the other thing that I want you to keep in mind as you're checking out different places. The YouTubers in a certain area may like certain things. Those may not be your things that you like. Frankly, I think that a lot of the people who were in La Paz are from California. They're used to the heat, they're used to the dry. They simply had different expectations of what they might find in a Mexico City, I think, than I did. And that's what you're going to find as you research this and potentially travel around, which brings me to point number 2. Before you move there, go check it out. Now, granted, there's lots of places in Mexico where you can secure a month lease, a 2-month lease, a 3-month lease. Most places are furnished, so you don't need to worry about getting everything that you need. And when I say furnished, I mean they come pretty much set with a kitchen. You've got silverware, plates, a toaster oven. Basically, you're set up the day you move in. Now, before I moved into my condo that I'm currently in, I checked with the people who were renting it to me and I said, does it come with linens? Because a friend of mine was selling her sheets. And I thought, well, if I'm going to need linens, maybe I'll just buy her sheets instead of buying some when I get there. And the response was, yes, you'll have those. Well, since I only mentioned the sheets and I don't think she knew what the word linens meant, I didn't have towels when I arrived. So when I got off my plane at 4 p.m., I had to literally go to Walmart that night and get more than a couple essentials. And this was after I had already built up a bin of different things that I kept in Mexico, which is another point to keep in mind. Many of us expats have a few Rubbermaid containers full of things that we leave and store in Mexico. A lot of times, the facility that you're renting from will have space for you to store it, but sometimes it's also really difficult to find space to store it. I had three such bins, and one of my Mexican friends, Fitzgerald, he's adorable, stored them for me the first year. Since then, I've just kind of stayed in the same apartment and haven't had to have them stored. Granted, if I were to move cities, I might rent a car or a truck to move these items there, or I might sell them and start over. Most of us expats try to travel light or keep as few things as possible so it's easier to move to different locations. So that's point number two. Make sure you go visit the area. Like La Paz was not what I expected. Nice city, not my city. And here's point number three with locations. They change, and so do your preferences. For example, a friend of mine down in Mazatlan originally started off on the other side of the country, over in Tulum. And she used to spend every winter down there for about 10 or 15 years. In fact, she even owned land there and loved it. But then it got more and more commercialized. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but the Gulf side also has a certain kind of seaweed that can make the ocean areas not so lovely. Both of these things combined meant that she didn't love Tulum as much as she thought she did. And some of her friends had been frequently Mazatlan, and that's where she ended up. And that's where she's been for the last 10 years. Now, there's also the flip side of that. When I first moved down there, there was a gentleman who's actually a YouTuber, Bill the Geek. In fact, I will link up Bill's channel down in the doobly doo. He is still living in Mexico, although he's not in Mazatlan anymore. And as you can see from the content here, he does a lot of videos about living in Mexico. He moved from Mazatlan to Moriela. And as I understand it, I believe it's a community in the mountains, which tends to not get as hot in the summer. I have to tell you, part of the reason that I'm up here in the States right now is because it's so hot there. Like I'm somebody who I'm Mediterranean, I'm Italian. The heat's never really bothered me. Not super anyway. In fact, I in another video renting out my home, you saw all my gardens. I put all that stuff in the summer. It didn't bother me working in the summer. And by the way, you might be thinking, "Oh, well, how hot does Minnesota get?" It's like 30 below. Hello. We get into the 80s, 90s, super humid with all our lakes. Remember, we have 10,000 of them. So it gets hot here. But I had no problem doing any of that. Move to Mexico, live in a place like Mazatlan during the summer? What? No. No, 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 no. No. Too hot. In fact, I found myself doing in Mazatlan what I do here in the winter, not going out. And part of the reason that I moved to Mexico was to get out and walk, to ground myself in the earth and around the people. And in the winter here in Minnesota, I don't really go out. And in the summer in Mazatlan, I don't really go out. So here is my next point. Renting places in Mexico is a little different. For example, the building that I'm in, they rent long term. So I have a 12-month lease. But if I leave for a few months in the summer, I pay only 10 months rent. I get 2 months free. Now, this isn't universal. This isn't everywhere, but those 2 months free rent allows me to allocate those resources then to traveling somewhere else. Hence, once I leave Minnesota, I'll be traveling to Mexico City and hopefully Oaxaca to finally see those areas. Well, I've already seen Mexico City, but I have not seen the pyramids. Super excited about that. Last point. Cost of living and cost of travel around Mexico. Another one of the reasons that I have not moved to Mexico City is the cost of rent in Mexico City, at least in the areas that I'd like to live in, like Roma Norte or Condesa. Those areas, the rent is about what I'd pay here in the Twin Cities, so I'm not really saving any money. Whereas in Mazatlan, my rent is only about $900 to $1,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo a few blocks from the Pacific Ocean with a pool and a gym and maintenance staff right there. Like, it's a sweet deal. But I'll also tell you that if you're packing up a suitcase and you're doing what I suggested you do, travel around and check out other areas, you can also get Airbnbs for pretty darn cheap. For example, on my trip to Mexico City, I am going to be looking at about $50 a night for 2 bedrooms, a bath, a standard nice condo in areas like Condesa and Roma Norte. So you could quite literally pack up a suitcase and just travel around Mexico, going to different Airbnbs and staying for even a month or so for about what you'd pay for rent in a medium cost city like St. Paul, Minneapolis. If you're in one of those expensive cities, you're a San Franer, you're in LA, you're in San Diego, you're even in Dallas or anywhere like that, you will definitely find that you can travel around Mexico for way less than what you were potentially paying for your cost of housing in your home city. Let me know if you've got any questions on any of this. I have so much information to share with you about moving to Mexico and making money by saving money. That's what I'm doing. So if there's something that you're wondering about, jot it down in the comments below and I will make sure I get to it. If you would also subscribe to this channel, you would surely be helping me out. I'm almost monetized, everybody. I'm almost there. So please, please, please subscribe. I want to see you back here too. Like this video so other people see it. And if you're interested, here is the video about me renting out my home, which I'm standing in right now. That's why there's no curtains back there. I'm getting new tenants in here so I can make more money on my home and let them build my equity. So click one of those links and I'll see you there.